Welcome to the Virtual Shift, a show looking at the seismic changes happening in healthcare with virtual care at the epicenter. Join me and my guests as we look at key cultural and policy shifts impacting how providers, payers, and patients connect, as well as how care is being reimagined both for today and the future. Hello, and thanks for tuning in today. I'm your host, Tom Foley. You can learn more about this show by visiting the program on healthcarenowradio.com, and be sure to follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter at FoleyTom, and the hashtag The Virtual Shift. Today we have some very special guests joining us. We have Carla Robinson, co-founder and CEO of Canary Telehealth. As well, we have Sam Robinson, also co-founder and president of Canary Telehealth. Carla, Sam, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So Carla, tell us a little bit about Canary Telehealth. What is it that they do?
Yeah, so we are a remote patient monitoring services company. So we think about it in terms of what are all of the things that are needed to execute a remote monitoring program, and we bring that together. So we provide the clinical services, we procure all the software and the devices that are needed. We develop the protocols, the workflows, and importantly, all the logistics and the user support that's needed. And we do that, frankly, my background was in consulting, and we do that in a very consultative fashion. So we work with payers and providers, and many of whom may have some parts of that they want to keep in-house or feel best able to keep in-house. And so they can, a la carte, if you will, select which aspects of the services they'd like to outsource, and we're comfortable doing that as well.
Interesting. Sam, tell us a bit more in the context of the types of the different clinical categories that you support within Canary Telehealth's offering.
We work with the classic chronic disease management. So when you start looking at hypertension, diabetes, asthma, and asthma, you could say something, you could be a little broader, say respiratory, and weight management, and also social determinants of health. So we use that remote monitoring to work with those groups of people, and they also may find themselves in the three categories that typically exist. You have the high risk patients, which is somewhat of what we traditionally think of as people who need a nurse to monitor them to help keep them safe at home and to avoid improper utilization of the emergency room or readmission into the hospital. Then you also, if you go down to the next segment on the pyramid, you have the moderate or rising risk population. We also work with that group of folks. And these are individuals who are classically walking around, have a condition that's moderately under control, but statistics say that about, I think, anywhere from 5 to 20% of those people will migrate to the next category on a yearly basis if never touched. And so we work with that group of folks to help them to maintain being under control, moderate or either low risk category, or to help them actually drop lower, because if you start with some of the conditions, as you well know, if you manage it well, you can actually reduce or reverse what's happening to the individual. And so we work with all the groups on the pyramid, the high risk, the moderate risk, as well as the low risk. And we have some other things we do too outside of the remote patient monitoring, but that's the category of folks inside of remote patient monitoring.
Interesting. And that's what I like about Canary Telehealth, in that, a lot of remote patient monitoring companies that I've been exposed to, they talk about their services in the context of monitoring. The health system sends out the medical device, their software does the monitoring, and, it's just that, monitoring. I love the fact that you talk about changing the direction in which that patient is going, focused on bringing them to wellness. So it's more than just monitoring. And that's the value of remote patient monitoring in and of itself, is in my view. Now, if you look at the standard tenet of the criteria, CMS criteria for remote patient monitoring, you might dig in and say, yeah, it is just monitoring, and that might be true. However, we're all about care. We're all about bringing value. and ultimately changing the direction. I always say moving that patient on an awareness to wellness continuum. Remote patient monitoring certainly helps them do that. What are your thoughts on that? Either one, Carla?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. The monitoring gives you the data, right? That then allows you to do something. And for us, it kind of starts there. But very importantly, what happens after that, you have that period of triage, right, to find out what they do about the readings that came through. But it also provides an opportunity for care advice, guidance, feedback, coaching, and education. All of those things are necessary. The data that comes through that's out of bounds provides you an opportunity for a dialogue with the individual that provides an opportunity for those other things that I just described. And the end game of that is that the individual learns to better manage their condition, right? So that's one of the most powerful things that we see coming out of it when it's great that the nurse can work with them and help keep them out of the hospital. It's superb when the individual learns to manage their condition and keep themselves out of the hospital.
The patient's ability to learn and be empowered themselves is a very powerful position. At the end of the day, when a patient is made aware of their condition, they have diabetes in the doctor's office, the journey often becomes very difficult. A lot of folks believe that diabetes is a progressive condition and can't be reversed and put into remission. I take the position that it can. But however, I know the reverse is that diabetes really doesn't hurt. However, as my audience knows, my father, who had diabetes, he had obviously hypertension. He had every complication known to diabetes, including home dialysis, amputation of one leg, amputation of the next, amputation of the arm, and then 2 fingers thereafter. So the last 5 years, it'll hurt, and it hurts not only the person, but the family and those around him. So it is a condition that needs to be more than managed, if you will. So how do you go about encouraging the patient to engage and do more on their own behalf, being their own self-advocate, if you will, to change the direction of their clinical state?
Yeah, Tom, and first I'll just say I can relate to your experience to a degree that you just described. And I'll say that, diabetes was prevalent in my family. When I was growing up, the elders in my family often had it, and I would see things like blindness or amputation of limbs. And I thought that was par for the course. I thought it just went along with having the condition. And when I was doing my consulting work in the healthcare industry, working with medical providers, pharmaceutical companies, medical devices companies, I learned so much and just realized, wow, there is so much that people don't know, don't understand about managing this condition. And frankly, that was part of my inspiration. So your story really touched me. That was a big part of my inspiration around embarking on this journey. And so to your question about how do we ultimately empower folks is it really is. So our nurses focus on that touch point, right? So it's one thing to tell people diet and exercise. 2 things are wrong with that. One, what diet, what exercise, right? And sometimes information conflicts and how much and, what have you. But there are points in time where you have folks' attention. And this is human nature. We're all this way, right? When a crisis happens, when something is going on, we pay a lot more attention than when we're busy with the rest of our days. And so that moment when your blood pressure is 210 over 95, right, you've got someone's attention and you have a more ripe opportunity, if you will, to impart some education. And it's closer to real time, right? We know any behavior shaping work will tell you that the closer you can get to the behavior, the more effective it is, right? And so now it's closer to the time. So, let's see, what did you eat yesterday? Let's go over that. What did you do yesterday? And now they can really get insight. It's not that people don't want to get better, right? But now they can really get insight into what exactly am I doing? For me personally, what changes can I make that move the needle? And that is incredibly insightful, and it provides the person the opportunity, a real opportunity for change.
And that's what I think the general patient needs to see. So there's a couple of paths that I want to go down here. And when you talk about remote patient monitoring, let's start from the beginning in that, obviously a patient has been identified to come on. What is your best practice where do you see the greatest results in a patient coming on the program and achieving the criteria necessary to utilize it as a tool versus, so what if I don't take my vitals, right? Thoughts on that?
That one is a tough one because you have hit to one of the major issues with getting individuals to participate, to actively engage in the process. And we do somewhat of an educational process over time. There's some folks that you can give that information to and they will trust it and believe it. And this is one of the issues that inside of the PCP office that occurs, to the point that a lot of the care providers actually give up, and they'll look at a person and make a judgment call and says, okay, I'm not going to worry about it, just pop this pill. Well, as with everything, medication that you're given is not a miracle drug and it changes anything, and you still yet have an obligation. But oftentimes, they'll mention it, they'll tell the person this, but then they just kind of let it go. So those are the folks that are coming in when we have to, first of all, do a really good sell job to get them to participate in the program. And so then in the process, we also give educational information, even sometimes videos, and then also it's the personal touch of our team working with the person over time to help them recognize that changes in the diet will make a difference. And again, as Carla pointed out earlier, catching them at that aha moment. So when they take that blood pressure, then we call them. And as well as if they don't take it, we call them, because helping them to remind them, although it can become somewhat like a water dropping on your head and you're trying to sleep, it becomes somewhat annoying. But at some point in time, we do get majority of the folks to start taking the measurements, and then at that point in time, we can start to talk to them about what are they experiencing, what are they feeling, and then now once you do that, now you can relate it to making the adjustments and some changes. And over time, as they see the numbers start to drop down, and then it says, oh yeah, last time you told me it was the my sugar number went up, as they would stated, went up higher because I had spaghetti for dinner. And that making that connection that, hey, that's spaghetti, that's a starch. That's the same as if you're eating a piece of candy because it is a sugar. And so making those type of small connections, because oftentimes that information is missing from the individual's knowledge, or it's not necessarily brought to bear at that point in time. And it is something difficult too, because here in America, most of us and I'm gonna stick with the spaghetti analogy. You have spaghetti, you have your meat, and you have your sauce, and you have some noodles, or either your sauce and your noodles. But no one recognized that, oh, an alternative could be that I could use a vegetable that's actually cut in a way that is like spaghetti. And once I start to eat it, it's an acquired taste where it just a change up, and then you become used to it. And so there are ways to make adjustments, and there are different recipes out there that are actually fantastic. But when we start looking at a behavior change, you just have to be able to get the person to try it. It's almost like everyone's going back to when they're a 2-year-old and your mom is trying to get you to try something new, and you're like, I don't like it, I don't like it. And then you try it one time, try a little bit, and it says, oh, okay, not so bad. And that's what we all have to go through.
I hear you. And a good spaghetti squash dinner is always good for you. But you bring up, Sam, you bring up a lot of interesting points, and you're bringing in the social determinants side of the equation. I always talk about remote patient monitoring being an extension of that primary care office, and to provide this continuous care. And so you have a care manager that's constantly engaged to help coach and educate and move that person to a greater state of wellness. And so in the market, we talk a lot about access to care. And I do believe that there are many, many challenges, unfortunate challenges, frankly, to the access of care. But let's just walk down a road with me for a second. If everyone had access, is the bigger argument to make whether or not a person has access to a cure? Meaning, I can't afford the meal. I don't know what type of exercises I should do. You don't need to belong to a gym to do exercises, as we all know. I had a guest on, and he was talking about, going down to the local store, and they had They had sugar candy, they had potato chips, but they didn't have any vegetables. What are your thoughts on access to a cure versus the challenge of access to care?
So what we've seen is that our nurses are frankly kind of the front line for a whole lot of this, right? What you just described. So oftentimes we'll do the triage and we'll ask the question, well, yeah, great. So your numbers are out of bounds. What happened? Did you first kind of questions, or did you take your medication? What have you? And you start to unpack a whole lot of things, right? And if all you can do is address the clinical aspect, then you're going to miss a whole host of things that are impacting those numbers, and the numbers will never go anywhere, and you'll be calling that person every day having the same conversation. We've been doing this since 2014. And so we learned very early on that we had to have a way to address those other issues. And so part of the workflows that we work through is when those things come up, not if, right, because they're going to come up. When those things come up, what is our off ramp for that? What is the referral mechanism in the process to actually get help to that patient?
Interesting. In your services, do you currently or plan to look at, there's other aspects of the virtual care model, right? Remote patient monitoring can do a lot, but there's also more in the context of what remote therapeutic monitoring permits and even chronic care management. How do you see those different programs relative to an overall shift in how the delivery of care will be in the near and long-term future? Tam, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, so frankly, CMS is saying that in the next few years, we're going to see, 25% of care from the hospital shifting to the home setting, right? And so I think we're going to see more and more of these kind of distinct services, if you will, today being offered in an array, really, to the same patient. So if I'm sending someone home, maybe they need some remote monitoring of their vitals, but they may also need some physical therapy and what have you. And so I think when you bring in the remote physiological monitoring, the remote therapeutic monitoring, I think all of those things, oftentimes you're talking about the same patient, right? And so CMS has to think about these in terms of different discrete codes, but it's really a broader part of taking care of this person mostly today post-acute, but frankly, increasingly it'll be more still acute, but yet delivered in the home. So I think we'll see some convergence of these discrete things coming together in a holistic way to address that patient in those episodes.
Because at the end of the day, RPM, you guys do it much more eloquently and more concisely in the context of engaging that patient towards a different state of wellness, as we talked about earlier. But at the end of the day, vitals is one thing. Yeah, what's my blood pressure? But did I take my pills, right? Or, if it was pain management, what's my pain level today? And am I wobbly, if you will? So there's different elements to gather. It's almost as if social determinants, a core set of social determinants is a vital in and of itself in order to better manage and better understand that patient. Because the home, once you bring the home as a setting of care into the picture, again, it's almost as if you were getting discharged from a hospital. What typically happens? And more so if you go from hospital to rehab to home, you have a front team, if you will, that goes out to the home and does an inspection and says you need a handrail, you need steps, you need a handicap ramp, you need all these different things in order for that home to become a viable setting. So remote patient monitoring, therapeutic monitoring, chronic care management may not go that far, but it may, or maybe it should, so that we could, maybe that handicap ramp is the reason why I can't get to the store to buy groceries, right? Whether I use my electric wheelchair or walk, or even get Uber for that matter. So, Carla, I'm just looking at that home as a setting of care. If you were a regulator, what would you ask for in order to better secure the services in a home setting?
So, Tom, I think you hit the nail on the head. The care that was previously delivered in the hospital, or is currently delivered in the hospital, you have a lot of controls in place, right? The diet is fairly well controlled. The cadence around the medication is fairly well controlled. I mean, so there's so much that you have in place. And so I would be looking for, as that shifts home, what are the full set of things, right? Let's start from top to bottom, from 12:01 a.m. until 12 o'clock the next night. What is happening in that hospital, and how do we make sure that something isn't missed that's essential that needs to happen in the home setting? And that's a fairly complex set of factors, and those sit with different vendors today, solution providers today, many of whom are accustomed to delivering those in an institutional setting or hospital setting. And so that is some work to do. And I think we certainly have seen the growth in the hospital at home market during this public health emergency. And I have every expectation that that's going to continue to grow, because I do think CMS will continue to support that. That's just my crystal ball conjecture. You let me be in the regulator's seat for a moment, so I'll take it.
Go for it. Go for it.
And I think what will be essential for that to, grow at scale is for those services to be readily available and comprehensive, such that the providers, the doctors, because the doctor's got to decide, right, to refer this patient to this care, and so that the doctor feels confident that their patient can be safely taken care of in the home setting.
Sam, you were going to say something?
I was, and because Carla said something that's really interesting when she said that the doctors feel confident that that patient is going to be cared for in the home. And reason why that really struck a chord with me because of how we operate here at Canary. We have a remote patient monitoring program with a large provider group, our hospital system even. And that one of the things that we hear back from the physicians and that they're like literally standing in line waiting to get in the program is, and this is a quote from them, that we know when they go home and if Canary is involved, they're going to be taken care of because you guys really do a bang up job and you catch things that we may even have missed. And those things that may have missed are dealing with those social determinants of health, where we are able to get in there. And here's the difference. When you're in the hospital, there are folks that we will not hire because I use the term, I said, you're hospitalized. Because at the hospital, you are the king or queen. You tell that person what to do, when to sleep, when to wake up, when to go to bed, when to eat. But when they get home, the roles have reversed. They are now in the commander's seat and they have the comm, if you like Star Trek. They are in the commander's seat, and when that grandmother or that husband or wife come home, they are going to return to their kingdom and they are going to rule. And they're going to say those nurses or whoever don't know what the heck they're talking about. And this is what good food tastes like. And it grows across all spectrums, all category, all races of people. Everyone feels that way because everyone likes home. Home is the king, is the castle. And so what we do is we recognize their authority and we go in there and make adjustments to their commands and help them and we become an advisor to the monarch or the monarchy in that home to help them understand those changes.
You just nailed it, Sam. And you're an advisor, and I think that is the missing link in a lot of what happens in healthcare. Right? I go in. It takes me 23 days on average to get an appointment with a doctor. The doctor sees me for 10 minutes and they spend half of that in that EHR that they spend a lot of money on, and they have regulations on what needs to be recorded. But, and then therefore it leaves little time for coaching and engagement. So again, from a Medicare perspective, based on their stats, 5 chronic conditions, 9 different doctors, I only spend 15 hours in front of that doctor. Wellness is not going to be achieved in the brick and mortar facility, and it just isn't going to happen with all due respect to the doctors. Wellness is going to be achieved at home, and that 8,745 hours that they're not in front of that doctor, 15 hours again being in front of the doctor. So, and then those doctors probably aren't as coordinated as they need to be. So you come in and see it from a holistic perspective, all their doctors, their conditions. And, at the end of the day, you're focused on how to get them to a better state of wellness through an advisory position. And ultimately, what you just stated was trust is the foundation of everything that you do and everything that transpires in context of that patient, listening to what you're doing. And then as what Carla said earlier, would be allow them to propel themselves to change their behaviors to achieve things that they thought weren't possible. We only have a couple minutes left. Sam, I'll leave it to you, and then Carla, I'll come to you for your final thoughts as well.
The whole key here is being able to engage that patient. And one of the things we said in the early days when we were trying to prove what remote patient monitoring was, we would tell the doctors that when they come to their office, they get a snapshot in time. But when we're working with them, we create a motion picture. And that motion picture is all encompassing because of the relationship. We're able to help change the direction of that person's quality of care by working with them as an advisor. And I think remote patient monitoring allows us to be able to close the gaps in care as well as increase the access to healthcare.
Carla, you have the last word.
At the end of the day, what do the numbers tell us? And the numbers tell us that, yes, we're very proud of the fact that we have 40 to 60% reduction in hospitalization, double-digit decreases in hypertension and other biometrics. But the numbers that really get me excited, Tom, back to the top of the conversation, is that 86% of our patients tell us that they now know how to better manage their condition. 88% of our patients tell us that they have better conversations with the doctor. So in that 15 hours that they have, imagine if they're able to go in and say, well, I noticed that my blood pressure really spikes at night. And you can have a conversation about the best time to take your medication. 87% tell us that they now know what their numbers mean and what their symptoms mean and what to do about it. For us, that's the holy grail. That's patient engagement and patient empowerment. And we're really, really proud to be a part of that.
You should be. You guys are doing a great job. Well said, both of yous overall. Carla Robinson, co-founder and CEO of Canary Telehealth, and Sam Robinson, co-founder and president of Canary Telehealth. I want to thank you for joining us today. As far as where they can find out more about Canary Telehealth, www.canarytelehealth.com. And again, I just want to thank you for being on the program and being awesome guests.
Thank you for your invite.
Thanks for having us.
I want to thank the show sponsors, HP. HP Engage Long Lifecycle Products provides the stability, safety, and security you need, plus flexibility and performance designed for today and tomorrow. As well, GenieMD, providing a modular, scalable, and customizable virtual care platform and clinical services to help providers extend care into the home, increasing access and quality while driving new revenue opportunities. If you missed part of today's episode, you can tune in at the same time, 11 a.m. or 7 p.m. Eastern, throughout the week, and be sure to check out the program page on healthcarenowradio.com. And remember, connect or follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter at FoleyTom, and follow the show's hashtag, The Virtual Shift. I'm Tom Foley. Until the next shift.